I trusted him without hesitation, without backup, without doubt. And that was my biggest mistake. Because when someone earns your trust in a world built on power, they don't just learn your weaknesses, they learn exactly how to use them. Trust in my life was never given easily. I was raised to be cautious, to observe before believing, to measure people by what they protect, not what they promise. So when I finally trusted him, it meant something. It meant I let my guard down in ways I never had before. He wasn't loud, he wasn't threatening, he didn't demand loyalty. That's what made him dangerous. He listened, he understood. He made me feel safe enough to be honest, and honesty in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. At first he seemed different. He spoke to me like a human being, not a position. He treated my silence like something to respect, not exploit. He made space for my thoughts instead of rushing past them. I thought I had found someone who understood the weight I carried. I was wrong. Trust doesn't break loudly. It cracks quietly. In small moments you dismiss. In doubts you ignore. In instincts you silence because you want to believe. I noticed things that felt off. Words repeated elsewhere. Concerns shared without permission. My private thoughts becoming public narratives. But I convinced myself I was overthinking. Because trusting someone means choosing belief over suspicion. He never lied directly. That's another lesson I learned too late. Some people don't like, they reframe, they twist truth just enough to serve themselves while still appearing honest. And because I trusted him, I gave him the benefit of every doubt. I spoke freely around him about fears I never named out loud, about frustrations I never showed publicly, about vulnerabilities that existed only in private. I didn't realize I was handing him leverage. The moment I understood what was happening didn't come with confrontation. It came with realization. I saw how narratives changed around me, how assumptions formed without my voice present, how trust I never broke was suddenly questioned, and I knew something I shared had been used. Betrayal hurts differently when it comes from someone you trusted. Not because of what they did, but because of what you allowed. You replay conversations, you analyze silences, you wonder which moment you should have protected yourself instead. I confronted him gently, not accusing, not angry. And that was when I saw it. Deflection, minimization, concern that sounded rehearsed. He wasn't sorry I was hurt. He was uncomfortable that I had noticed. That was the moment everything became clear. Trust to him was access, and access was opportunity. In words like mine, information is power. And I had handed it over freely, not because I was careless, but because I believed trust was mutual. It wasn't. I learned something painful. Some people stay close not because they care, but because proximity benefits them. They listen not to understand, but to collect. They support not to protect, but to position themselves. Walking away was quiet, no announcement, no explanation, because I learned that people who betray trust don't deserve closure, they deserve distance. I blamed myself at first for trusting too much, for opening up, for believing someone could be safe in an unsafe environment. But slowly that blame shifted, because trust is not weakness, it is courage. Misplacing it does not make you foolish, it makes you human. The mistake wasn't trusting him. The mistake was ignoring my instincts when they whispered warnings. Now I trust differently, not less, but wiser. I watch consistency. I observe how people handle power, not praise. I notice who protects what I share, even when it costs them nothing to expose it. He lost access, and access was the only thing he ever wanted. I trusted him. That was my biggest mistake. But learning from that mistake was my greatest protection, because betrayal teaches you something trust never could. Who deserves a place close to you, and who was only there to benefit from your openness. And I will never confuse familiarity with loyalty again. After I stepped back, I expected relief. I thought distance would erase the weight, that cutting him off would bring instant clarity. It didn't. What it brought was reflection, because when trust breaks, the loudest noise isn't anger. It's self-questioning. I replayed moments I once considered harmless. The way he asked questions that felt caring. The way he remembered details I hadn't offered recently. The way he positioned himself as the one person who understood. Understanding, I learned, can be a strategy. I realized how often I had explained myself to him. Not because he asked, but because he made it feel safe to do so. That safety wasn't real, it was convenient. What hurt most wasn't what he did with the information. It was how easily he detached once it no longer benefited him. No concern, no accountability, no effort to repair what was broken. Just distance, as if trust had been a phase, not a responsibility. That's when I understood something difficult. People who value access over integrity never mourn the damage they cause. They move on quickly because they were never invested in the relationship, only the advantage. I stopped looking for closure from him, because closure assumes remorse, and remorse requires conscience. Instead, I gave myself the closure I needed. I stopped justifying his behavior, stopped minimizing the impact, stopped telling myself it wasn't that serious. It was serious, because it changed how safe I felt being myself. There's a quiet grief that comes with betrayal, not dramatic, not visible. Grief for the version of yourself that trusted freely. That loss stays with you longer than the person who caused it. But something else happened too. I became sharper, not colder. Clearer. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before. The way some people only show up when there's something to gain. The way empathy disappears once access is removed. Trust, I learned, isn't built by words. It's built by what people protect when they have nothing to gain. I also learned that boundaries don't require explanation. The moment you feel the need to explain why you stepped back, you're already negotiating with someone who doesn't respect limits. So I stopped explaining. He never apologized, but I stopped waiting for one, and that strangely felt like power returning to me. I no longer share everything, not because I'm afraid, but because discernment is wisdom earned the hard way. Some things deserve privacy, some truths deserve protection, and not everyone earns access to your inner world. Trusting him was my biggest mistake, but staying silent about what I learned would have been a bigger one. Now, when someone listens too closely, I ask myself why. When someone agrees too easily, I watch what they do when disagreement costs them comfort. Because trust isn't about closeness, it's about character. I don't regret trusting. I regret ignoring the moment my intuition spoke, and I chose comfort over clarity. That choice taught me more than betrayal ever could. I trusted him. That was my biggest mistake. But learning who not to trust was the lesson that finally set me free.